who is a very strong person and a very strong leader and very highly respected in Germany. And he's my friend, and it's an honor to have him as my friend. Thank you very much. Very good. You look great with your tan. Where did you get that tan? I want to get a tan like that. President Stubb of Finland, and he's somebody that, where are we here? Where? Oh, you look better than I've ever seen you look. But you've done a great job, and we wanted to have you here because you're somebody that we all respect. And you've had a lot to do with the success, I think, and the potential success. And thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. And the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who is somebody that we just made a big deal with all of those countries. I don't know. I think you might be more powerful than all these guys at this table. I don't know. But we had a great negotiation, and you're respected all over the world. So I want to thank you very much for being here. It's a great honor to have you. The Alaska Summit reinforced my belief that while difficult, peace is within reach, and I believe that in a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider, and we're going to be considering that at the table also, like who will do what, essentially. I'm optimistic that collectively we can reach an agreement that would deter any future aggression against Ukraine, and I actually think there won't be. I think that's even overrated, largely overrated, but we're going to find out. And I think that the European nations are going to take a burden. We're going to help them, and we're going to make it very secure. We also need to discuss the possible exchanges of territory, taking into consideration the current line of contact. That means the war zone, the war lines that are pretty obvious, very sad, actually, to look at them. And negotiating positions. President Putin, also, you have President of Ukraine, who is, you just met a little while ago, and we're going to try and get a three-party meeting, maybe as soon as we can. And I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out. Ultimately, this is a decision that can only be made by President Zelenskyy and by the people of Ukraine working also together in agreement with President Putin. And I just think that's very good things are going to come of it. So I hope we have a good meeting. And if we can have a good meeting, I'll set up a meeting with President Putin. And if you'd like, I'll go to that meeting. And not that I want to do that, but I will do that because we want to save a lot of people from dying. A lot of people are dying, and we got to save them. Got to save it. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people sometimes a week. All of us would obviously prefer an immediate ceasefire while we work on a lasting peace, and maybe something like that could happen. As of this moment, it's not happening, but President Zelenskyy and President Putin can talk a little bit more about that. You know, in the 6 or so wars that we stopped, we haven't had a ceasefire. And so I don't know that it's necessary. You can do it through the war, but it would be, I like the ceasefire from another standpoint. You immediately stop the killing. But I believe a peace agreement at the end of all of this is something that's very attainable, and it can be done in the near future. With all of the wars that I got involved in, we only have this one left. Of course, as I walk out the door, there'll probably be a new one starting, and I'll get that stopped too. But I thought this was going to be one of the easier ones. It's actually one of the most difficult, very complex. The next step would be for a trilateral meeting, and that will be worked out. And I just look forward to working and having a great result. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about, and we're really honored you guys came over. I mean, these are the heads of major countries and respected all over Europe. And they speak for, largely, I think I should say, but pretty much for the other countries of Europe. And we will come to a resolution today, I think, on almost everything, including probably the security. And that's pretty much the story. I'd like to say, Mr. President, would you like to say something? You have the media. If you want, you could come over and you could stand. You could use mine, or you could just turn around, whichever you feel comfortable with.
Thank you so much. I can speak without microphone. Thank you so much. I think that we had very good conversation with President Trump.
Very good.
And it really was the best one. Maybe the best one will be in the future. But it was really good. And we spoke about very sensitive points. The first one is security guarantees. And we are very happy with President that all the leaders are here, and the security in Ukraine depends on the United States and on you and on those leaders who are with us in our hearts. They have been online before yesterday, and etc. So a lot of countries on the side of Ukraine, our people, and all of us want to finish this war, stop Russia and stop this war. We spoke about it, and we will speak more about security guarantees. This is very important that the United States gives such strong signal and is ready for security guarantees. The second point, or maybe the first, humanitarian direction, very important to exchange all the prisoners, and I think that President will help. And I was very thankful to your wife again, Mr. President, for the letter about our abducted children, and I hope that really it can be a historic role for the people to bring kids back to the families and be happy.
Get the people back, yeah.
Yes, this is so important, and I'm happy that we discussed it, this track with the President Trump, and I hope that we will find decisions. And then what is very important, that all the sensitive things, territorial, etc., we will discuss on the level of leaders during trilateral meeting, and President Trump will try to organize such meeting, and he said that he will come or not come. Ukraine will be happy if you will
both want me there, I will be there. Yeah,
yeah,
you know that.
Thank you. And I think this is very important. Yes, so security guarantees, bringing kids back, and all our people, not only warriors, first of all warriors, and all the civilians, journalists, a lot of people in prison. So we need them back. And guarantees which will work for the years. We spoke about it, and I showed the President a lot of details on the battlefield, on the map. Thank you so much. Thank you for the map, by the way.
Good map.
It was great. Yeah. I'm thinking how to take it back.
We'll get you.
No. I think that we had constructive, specific meeting, and I'm very thankful to all the leaders who are here, and you help a lot, and so we're happy that we have such big unity today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much,
for hosting us.
Mr. President. I think you'll see that President Putin really would like to do something else. I think when we set that up, when we do, I think it's going to be when, not if. I think you're going to see some really positive moves. I know there's over 1,000 prisoners, and I know they're going to release them. Maybe they're going to release them very soon, like immediately, which I think is great. But we're going to set that up today after this meeting. So very good and great remarks. I appreciate it. Mark, as head of NATO, maybe you could say a few words, please.
Yes, I will be very brief. I really want to thank you, President of the United States, dear Donald, for the fact that you, as I said before, broke the deadlock. Basically with President Putin by starting that dialogue. And I think it was in February that you had the first phone call. And from there, we are now where we are today. And that is, I think, if we play this well, we could end this. And we have to end this. We have to stop the killing. We have to stop the destruction of Ukraine's infrastructure. It is a terrible war. So I'm really excited. And let's make the best out of today and make sure that from today onwards, we get this thing to an end as soon as possible. I really want to thank you for your leadership, what you are doing for Volodymyr, but of course also all the European colleagues. It is really crucial. And the fact that you have said, I'm willing to participate in the security guarantees is a big step. It's really a breakthrough, and it makes all the difference. So also thank you for that.
Well, NATO also has agreed from 2% to 5%, which is something that is a massive amount of money. And it's 2% that wasn't always paid to 5% that is paid. That's a big difference. And so we appreciate that. That was a great move. Thank you very much. Ursula, maybe on behalf of the Commission, you could say a couple of words.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a very important moment. Indeed, we are here, Europeans, as friends and allies. We had a fantastic NATO summit. Together as the two largest and biggest economies in the world, we had the largest trade deal ever agreed. And now we are here to work together with you on a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. Stop the killing. This is really our common interest, stop the killing. And indeed, it's very good to hear that we're working on the security guarantees, Article 5 lies security guarantees, so important. But I want to thank you also that you mentioned the thousands of Ukrainian children that have been abducted. And as a mother and grandmother, every single child has to go back to its family. This should be one of our main priorities also in these negotiations, to make sure that the children come back to Ukraine, to their families.
Thank you. And we did. I was just thinking we're here for a different reason, but we just a couple of weeks ago made the largest trade deal in history. So that's a big thing, and congratulations. That's great. Thank you very much, Ursula. Mr. Chancellor from Germany, a very great leader.
Mr. President, dear Donald, many thanks for having us today. I think this is extremely helpful that we are meeting and hearing that the two of you are having such a good meeting today here in Washington. The next steps ahead are the more complicated ones now. The path is open. You opened it last Friday. But now the way is open for complicated negotiations. And to be honest, we all would like to see a ceasefire, the latest from the next meeting on. I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia, because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on at least a ceasefire from the beginning of the serious negotiations, from next step on. So I would like to emphasize this aspect and would like to see a ceasefire from the next meeting, which should be a trilateral meeting wherever it takes place.
Well, we're going to let the president go over and talk to the president, and we'll see how that works out, and if we can do that. I will say, and again I say it, in the 6 wars that I've settled, I haven't had a ceasefire. We just got into negotiations, and one of the wars was, as you know, in the Congo was 31 years long. Another one that we settled last week with 2 great countries was 35 years going on, and we had no ceasefire. So if we can do the ceasefire, great. And if we don't do a ceasefire, because many other points were given to us, many points were given to us, great points. Please, Georgia, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Donald, Mr. President, for hosting us today in this important meeting. And I think it is an important day, a new phase, after 3 years and a half that we didn't see any kind of sign from the Russian side that there was a willing for dialogue. So something is changing, something has changed, thanks to you. Thanks also to the stalling in the battlefield, which was achieved with the bravery of Ukrainians and with the unity that we all provided to Ukraine. And the reason why I mention it is that we also have to remind that if we want to reach peace and if we want to guarantee justice, we have to do it united. So that's why it's a very good day, the one we are in. You can obviously count on Italy as it was from the beginning. We are on the side of Ukraine, and we do absolutely support your efforts towards peace. We will talk about many important topics. The first one is security guarantees, how to be sure that it won't happen again, which is the precondition of every kind of peace. I'm happy that we will discuss about that. I'm happy that we will begin from a proposal, which is the, let's say, Article 5 model, which was Italian at the beginning. So we are always ready to bring our proposals for peace, for dialogue. It's something we have to build together to guarantee peace and to defend the security of our nation. So thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us.
Thank you very much. Emmanuel?
Thank you, Mr. President, for organizing this meeting and for your commitment. And everything was said, but I just have to say here, everybody around this table is in favor of peace. And we work very hard, and we've worked very hard during the past few years to have a peace which is a robust and long-standing peace. This is why the idea of a trilateral meeting is very important, because this is the only way to fix it. And by the way, I think as a follow-up, we would need probably a quadrilateral meeting, because when we speak about security guarantees, we speak about the whole security of the European continent. And this is why we are all united here with Ukraine on this matter. In order to organize such a trilateral meeting, your idea to ask for a truce or a ceasefire, at least to stop the killings, as we discussed, is a necessity. And we all support this idea. And in order to have such a long-standing peace for Ukraine and for the whole continent, we do need these security guarantees. And the first one is clearly a credible Ukrainian army for the years and decades to come. And the second one is our own commitment, all of us. And we worked very hard during the past few months among the coalition of the willings, with the support of NATO, to build the different pillars of security guarantees and our commitments. And you can be sure that the Europeans are very lucid about the fact that they have their fair share in these security guarantees for Ukraine, but their own security is clearly at stake in this situation. So you can count on us, as we can count on you, in order to deliver this robust peace for both Ukraine and Europe.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for hosting us here. Can I start where Emmanuel started, which is we all want peace. The war in Ukraine has had a huge impact, particularly on the Ukrainians who've borne the brunt of it, but it's also had an impact on Europe and on the United Kingdom. There's not a family or community that hasn't been affected. And when we talk about security, we're talking about the security not just of Ukraine, we're talking about the security of Europe and the United Kingdom as well, which is why this is such an important issue. I think this is such an important meeting. As a group, I think we've had a discussion on the phone a number of times, Mr. President, but be able now to be around the table to take it forward. And I really feel that we can, I think, with the right approach this afternoon, make real progress, particularly on the security guarantees, and your indication of security guarantees of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees fits with what we've been doing with the Coalition of the Willing, which we started some months ago, bringing countries together and showing that we were prepared to step up to the plate when it came to security. With you coming alongside, the US alongside what we've already developed, I think we could take a really important step forward today. A historic step, actually, could come out of this meeting in terms of security for Ukraine and security in Europe. I also feel that we can make real progress towards a just and lasting outcome. Obviously, that has to involve Ukraine, and a trilateral meeting seems the sensible next step. So thank you for being prepared to take that forward, because I think if we can ensure that that is the progress out of this meeting, both security guarantees and some sort of progress on trilateral meeting of some sort to bring some of the difficult issues to a head, then I think today will be seen as a very important day in recent years in relation to a conflict which has gone on for 3 and a bit years, and so far nobody's been able to bring it to this point. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much. And, you know, it's very interesting because this is the first for the White House. You can't say that very often. It's seen a lot over the years, since 1800, 1799, to be almost exact. But this is the first where we've had so many prime ministers, presidents, the heads of European nations. And by the way, Alex, I'd like you to say a couple of words, too. You're a young, powerful man. Before I finish up, I want you to say a couple of words. Go ahead.
I'll take the notion of youth back to my wife and try to convince her. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years. And I think the fact that we're around this table today is very much symbolic in the sense that it's Team Europe and Team United States helping Ukraine. And the progress that we're looking out of this meeting is about the security guarantees, which are a big part of this, and then, of course, moving towards a process with a trilateral meeting with you and President Putin and President Zelenskyy. Some of the international media might wonder, why is the President of Finland here? I think the reason is probably that we might come from a small country, but we have a long border with Russia, over 800 miles. And we, of course, have our own historical experience with Russia from World War II, the Winter War and the War of Continuation. And if I look at the silver lining of where we stand right now, we found a solution in 1944, and I'm sure that we'll be able to find a solution in 2025 to end Russia's war of aggression and find and get a lasting and just peace. The situation is very difficult, but that's why we're here.
Thank you, Alex, very much. Good job. So we're going to be meeting for a while, and we're going to discuss some of the issues. And I don't think there's any issue that's overly complex. It's at a point now where people want to do things. I really do believe. I've known him for a long time. I've always had a great relationship with him. I think that President Putin wants to find an answer too. And we'll see. And in a certain period of time, not very far from now, a week or 2 weeks, we're going to know whether or not we're going to solve this, or is this horrible fighting going to continue? We'll do our best to get it ended. And I believe you have two willing parties, and usually that's good news, but two willing parties that want to make a deal. And we'll journey together, and we'll go over, and we'll see if it can be done. And it's possible it might not be able to be done. On the other hand, it's possible it will, and we're going to save thousands and thousands of lives a week. And so it's something we really have to do. And, or at least we have to give it our best. It's all you can do. You can give it your best. But I think we may have a very good outcome. So I want to thank you all, and the media, I want to thank you. We're going to be staying here for a little while. Then we're going to walk over to the Oval Office, and we're going to have another little discussion about similar matters. And then they're going to go home to their great countries and report. And I'm going to remain here and work, and you're going to go and work. We're all going to be working. We may be in a different location, but that's what we know how to do is work. But I want to thank the media. Has been actually very fair, generally speaking, very fair. I think it's important that they're fair, because this is a very important subject. We have to get it ended. And so that's all we ask for is fairness with the media. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And we have been watching there President Trump sitting there at quite the table there with European and NATO leaders, as well as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, right before they go behind closed doors to discuss a possible deal, or at least the next steps in achieving a possible deal. This comes, of course, 3 days after President Trump's face-to-face summit, and that was in Alaska, with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This has all come together very, very quickly with these leaders coming into Washington, D.C. In order to meet with the president and show their support for President Zelenskyy. The tone and tenor of this meeting, obviously much different than the last time Zelenskyy came to the White House. And this was a rather optimistic tone from each of those leaders voicing their take on what happens next. Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins us now live. Nancy, I was struck by how many of these leaders were saying that this is the closest they think they have gotten in more than 3 years in achieving peace. What stood out to you?
Sure, and that's not even a subjective statement, Nancy. There's been very little dialogue with Vladimir Putin directly over the past 3.5 years. Now that is happening, and it may not be going down exactly the way they'd like to see it happen. They may be somewhat alarmed by Trump's areas of agreement with Putin, but nevertheless, it is at least a conversation about ending this war. And it was fascinating to see one European leader after the next point that out and say that they are grateful that these conversations are happening. They were very reluctant to criticize the president, even on the areas that we know that they have a great disagreement with him about. In fact, the only one who really raised a sore subject was German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and he did it quite quite gently. He did not directly criticize the President of the United States, but in that blunt way that perhaps only a German leader could. He said that he really hopes that by the time they get to a trilateral meeting that involves Vladimir Putin, he hopes that there will be a ceasefire in place, making the case on behalf of all of those European leaders that they think that that is an important prerequisite. Putin showing that he is serious about stopping the killing before he is allowed to enter into conversations about territory changing hands.
Definitely one of the sticking points, among others, security guarantees were brought up, and it seems like there's been some real movement on that front as well.
Yes, a number of the European leaders were very relieved to hear President Trump say in his initial bilateral meeting with Volodymyr Zelenskyy that the U.S. is going to be part of any security guarantee. He did not shut the door on the possibility of sending U.S. peacekeeping troops to Ukraine. And that is critical, Nancy, because the great fear that a number of these European leaders have is that Putin will try to grab control of whatever territory he can in some kind of diplomatic process now, and then come and attack Ukraine again in a few years. And security guarantees from the U.S. and other European countries, basically an ironclad agreement that they will step in and defend Ukraine, potentially even with their own military forces, if Russia were to attack again. They think that's a very powerful deterrent to Putin's aggression. And a number of the leaders said point blank that the reason this is so important is because it affects the entire European continent, not just Ukraine. Because if Putin feels that he can attack Ukraine with impunity, what's to stop him from attacking other European nations in the future? So that is an emerging area of consensus that all the leaders seem to be pleased about.
Another point, though, was the latest on territorial concessions. And it seems like Zelenskyy is open to, or at least saying that this would be settled in a meeting that would be yet to be determined with Putin himself.
Right. That was fascinating because the president's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said yesterday that these talks here at the White House today were going to center around the 20% or so of Ukrainian territory that Putin's forces currently control. That is something that Zelenskyy adamantly did not want to happen. He said so yesterday, that he believes that that kind of conversation should only happen once he is sitting across the table from Putin, where they're both making concessions. It's unclear that Putin so far has made any concessions, and so Zelenskyy certainly doesn't want to weaken his hand by making any himself. And it appears that the president exceeded on those wishes, because what Zelenskyy said right at the top of this meeting, Nancy, was that that is going to be a conversation for the trilateral meeting to come. And President Trump said he wants to set that up as soon as possible. And that is what so many leaders are watching to see, whether when push comes to shove, Putin is really willing for the first time to sit down with Ukraine's leader and engage in a back and forth.
Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes, thank you very much for joining us, Nancy.
You're welcome.
We're going to turn things now to CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd. Sam, thanks for being with us. You know, we were talking about there with Nancy, saying that this really seemed to be the most optimistic that these leaders have been in these 3+ years in ending the war. Could peace really be on the table here?
Well, Nancy, it is way too soon to tell, but as Nancy mentioned, it is certainly a fact that the Biden administration, which I was a part of, did not speak directly to President Putin, certainly not at the head of state level, in the level of detail that President Trump did in Alaska. So it is true that negotiations have been supercharged on one level. What remains unclear, however, is whether Vladimir Putin is engaging in these negotiations to buy time and to stall, or if he really is committed to coming to some sort of peace agreement. And that's why the European leaders, both in public and in private, are likely urging President Trump to verify that Putin means what he says. So time will tell whether peace is near, but we certainly have choreography laid out for how we could get there. The European leaders, including Zelenskyy, are meeting with Trump right now. President Trump will then call Vladimir Putin and propose a trilateral meeting of some kind between President Putin, President Zelenskyy, and likely President Trump. And I would imagine as well that after this larger meeting with President Trump, the Europeans will have their own internal conversations with President Zelenskyy about how to proceed and try to get a credible and robust peace.
And Sam, you know, I'm struck in seeing all these leaders sitting at this table by how many schedules were thrown up in the air over the weekend as everyone scrambled to get to Washington, D.C. and really show force as they sat alongside President Zelenskyy there. Is this what it takes in order to really move the needle, you think?
I think there are two factors here. The first is the Europeans are deeply committed to showing unity with each other and with Ukraine. So there's strength in numbers when it comes to showing Vladimir Putin and showing President Trump that Europe is united behind Ukraine and united when it comes to trying to get security guarantees and a credible, long-lasting peace for the Ukrainian people. In addition to that, President Zelenskyy and the European leaders in the room know that President Trump has a good relationship with several of the leaders that are there today, including Macron, including Meloni, including Merz. And so having individuals with whom he has a warm relationship present certainly helps the tone of discussions as they move into a very complex period and could be discussing the details of what a peace arrangement could look like, which is a very complex undertaking.
Oh, absolutely. When we talk about this complex undertaking, you know, when you even look at the negotiations and the things on the table with security guarantees, with territorial concessions, with a ceasefire, whether or not that's going to be happening or not in the interim, which do you think will take priority in those discussions, or do they all happen concurrently?
Well, we heard a few key ingredients of a potential peace arrangement. We heard about territorial land swaps. We heard about security guarantees. We also heard about a very important point, which is the return of Ukrainian children illegally abducted into Russia. Estimates put that number at around 20,000, which is almost impossible to comprehend, as well as the exchange of prisoners. Estimates are that there are thousands of Ukrainian prisoners inside of Russia. So I don't know that any issue will take priority. I think all issues are on the table. We know that from Putin's perspective, he's focused on maintaining certain territory. He wants Russian to be an official language inside of Ukraine and a few other points. I will note that according to the Ukrainian constitution, the president of Ukraine can't just unilaterally decide to give territory to Russia. There will likely need to be a national referendum on whatever land swaps, to use President Trump's term, President Zelenskyy may or may not agree to.
Is there a sense that, is there a tell you'll be looking for at the end of this day to see where things go next?
I'll be looking to see whether a trilateral summit is in fact scheduled and whether the Europeans have been successful in persuading President Trump that a ceasefire is a prerequisite to a trilateral summit. You heard German Chancellor Merz mention the need for a ceasefire. I believe President Macron raised that as well. So whether we come to a point where President Trump insists on a ceasefire prior to a trilateral summit is going to be key, and whether we get any more clarity on what security guarantees may be on the table, including ongoing U.S. assistance to Ukraine's military, so that's a credible fighting force in the years ahead, and whether any country, the U.S. or the Europeans, actually agrees to put boots on the ground in Ukraine if a peace arrangement is finalized.
All right, Sam Vinograd, thank you very much for being with us. And CBS News Chief Washington analyst Robert Costa joins us now from our Washington bureau. Bob, thanks for being with us. What are you hearing from inside the White House in reaction to today's meetings? I mean, there really could be some significant progress here.
So much of this discussion is about making incremental progress. There's not an expectation that peace is going to be on the table today, but they want to push the ball forward and have some kind of meeting between President Putin and President Zelenskyy in the coming weeks. And having the Europeans here shows some buy-in to the process. It gives it a legitimacy, at least in terms of the visual presentation to the world. It's not like they are watching from afar. They are watching up close. They are being confidants to President Zelenskyy as he engages with this dialogue. But at the end of the day, there's a belief inside this White House that President Zelenskyy will have to decide for himself how far he's willing to go to make concessions, whether that means giving up some land that is currently controlled by the Russian military, whether it means just accepting some security guarantees. All of this is going to be part of the discussions in the coming weeks, and it's very much to be determined.
We're talking about the players on the international stage, Bob. How about here at home. Have you heard from Congress, any members of Congress, on today's developments?
President Trump, as you know, has real command of the Republican Party, and there is a lot of movement inside of the GOP to support him, but also to not have the United States remain a lingering presence in this war for a long time. There are some traditional Republican hawks in the GOP and traditional hawks inside of the Democratic Party. And by hawk, I mean people who abide by norms in U.S. foreign policy, discussions, views of NATO, where it is seen as the kind of preeminent organization for the United States and its involvement in European affairs militarily. President Trump has never embraced those norms, and that has shaped, of course, how this dialogue is playing out. It's not going exactly how you would expect a guidebook to go if you were going by the NATO rules or institutions or norms. But there's an acceptance after seeing President Trump already in the White House for 4 years, now back in the White House again, that things are going to be different, that he's going to be mercurial and do things on his own and often keep his own counsel.
All right, Bob Costa, we really appreciate your insight. Very good to have you with us.
Thank you.
And if you are just joining us right now at 3:30 here on the East Coast, we've been covering the very latest as quite the group of world leaders, both European Union and NATO leaders, joined President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy in discussing the next steps in achieving a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. We saw there German Chancellor Merz, French President Macron, as well as Prime Minister Keir Starmer, among many others, talking about how they think this is perhaps the closest that the world has gotten in ending the war in more than 3 years. We're going to turn things now to Olivia Rinaldi, if I understand that correctly, for the latest insight there. Okay, I'm being told we will go to her shortly. But in the meantime, this meeting between all these world leaders came together very quickly after, of course, that big summit on Friday in Alaska between the President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. All right, now we have CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia, thanks for being with us on this very busy day. I know these leaders are now behind closed doors after speaking to the press there. What do you think is going to really be the main sticking points for these leaders as they discuss the next steps?
Well, Nancy, it became very clear through the conversations and the conversations that Trump was having with the pool that was in the room, with the reporters that were there, and then also what we heard from the European leaders to the pool, that there are two main sticking points. One is a potential ceasefire before there is a peace deal. We know this was what changed last Friday after President Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin, that before he was saying he'd like a ceasefire deal, then after that meeting he said he doesn't think there needs to be a ceasefire deal in order to have ultimate peace in Ukraine. We just heard from the German Chancellor, who was in that East Room meeting with other European leaders, who said he feels that there needs to be a ceasefire on the table before they even have those serious conversations about a peace deal. Now, the reason why that's important is because this is something Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has repeatedly said, that he feels he can't go to Moscow and have conversations about ending the war if there are still bombs falling. President Trump, however, has said that he has been able to have conversations and wars previously without having a ceasefire on the table. He said he understands that some people would prefer that, but he feels that it's not necessary in this case, and he's been able to do it before without getting that ceasefire. That's point number one. Now, point number two is definitely those conversations about security agreements and guarantees. That's the key crux of what the meeting here today is going to be about. We know they have been saying these words, Article 5 like security guarantees. Keep that in mind. That's important because Article 5, of course, is with NATO. When a NATO country is attacked, it is viewed as an attack on all NATO members. That's what Article 5 means. President Trump has said Ukraine will not join NATO. Therefore, they cannot have Article 5. However, they can have Article 5-like guarantees, which would mean a security agreement between some European countries, Ukraine, and the U.S. as well. That would mean if Russia were to attack again in the future, that they would rush to Ukraine's aid. That's important because that helps keep those lines clear. If there were to be an ultimate peace deal made between Ukraine and Russia, what stops Russian aggression again? Well, it would be stronger security guarantees between the U.S., Europe, and Ukraine. So that's what is being discussed today. Also of note, President Trump was asked in the Oval Office during that meeting with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy whether U.S. troops would be on the ground as part of those security guarantees. And Nancy, he didn't say no. So there's a lot we need to watch out for later today of what could come out of the meeting that's happening behind us in the White House.
All right, Olivia Rinaldi, thank you very much. We appreciate your insight, and we'll be checking in with you and the rest of the team. Thank you. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams joins us now from Ukraine. Holly, very good to see you. We heard there Nancy describing this as the best chance, perhaps, for peace in quite some time. What are the people of Ukraine there hoping will come as a result of this?
Hey there, Nancy. Well, in that meeting just now at the White House, President Trump said that if he can hold a trilateral meeting with Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelenskyy, he thinks, quote, there's a reasonable chance of ending the war. Now, from the Ukrainian perspective, they would say they've always wanted peace. They never wanted their country to be invaded. But the question for them is really peace at what cost? And it's a complicated question. Ukrainians have been fighting to defend their country for more than 3 years now. They've been applauded for their courage. But a recent poll found that nearly 70% of Ukrainians now support a negotiated peace deal, and that is up from just over 20% at the beginning of the invasion. Quite simply, many Ukrainians are exhausted and they have taken hundreds of thousands of casualties. But the devil, Nancy, is really in the details, because some Ukrainians have told us that handing over swaths of their country permanently to Russia, that is not freezing the front line, but actually redrawing lines on a map, that is not a price they are willing to pay. And President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has said that it would be unconstitutional. It may also be politically untenable for him, because some people would see it as a capitulation or politically foolish. On top of that, Ukraine and some of its allies in Europe fear that sacrificing Ukrainian territory to Russia would set a dangerous precedent, because it would reward Vladimir Putin for invading Ukraine and maybe even encourage him to do it again. Finally, even if miraculously a deal can be done, many Ukrainians have said to us that they simply do not trust Vladimir Putin to stick to his word, because he invaded their country back in 2014 and then he broke international agreements and invaded all over again in 2022.
Of course, and Holly, we are talking so much about peace as yet. The fighting continues, perhaps even intensifies in some areas there. Can you give us an update on the state of the war on the ground there?
Sure. I mean, the Russians have the upper hand on the battlefield, and they have now for some time. They are taking territory in eastern Ukraine slowly and at the cost of many lives on both sides, but they are taking it. The Russians have a very clear demographic advantage. Quite simply, they outnumber the Ukrainians, and that is not going to change. To give you a sense of what life is like now in Ukraine, early this morning in the city of Kharkiv, which is to the northeast of here, just before sunrise, Ukrainian officials say that a swarm of Russian drones partially destroyed an apartment building in that city. They say that at least 5 people were killed, including a baby girl. There is very disturbing video of rescue workers trying to resuscitate that baby girl and failing. Now it's very upsetting watching for us. Imagine what that looks like to Ukrainians. To many Ukrainians, it simply doesn't look very much like Vladimir Putin wants peace.
A devastating insight into what's happening, and so important that we continue that reporting. Holly Williams, thank you very much for joining us from the ground. We are going to take a short break. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7.
We're NCIS. You guys want to see me do the cha-cha slide? Can we get to the body, please? Right.
Oh, what's got you so punchy lately?
Not punchy, passionate.
This is a great team for Wood.
We're NCIS.
NCIS, all episodes now streaming on Paramount Plus and returning CBS Fall.
No matter how you start your day, one thing is clear.
Actually, two things. Pretty sure it's three.
Guys, whether it's